So, if you've ever listened to my podcast, you will hear me very often refer to Steve. And no, he's not my imaginary friend. He's not like my boyfriend Chad. That's what I call my chat GPT. Steve is actually the guy behind the scenes doing all the work that I absolutely hate. He's a huge reason why I've made it to the 100th episode because all I have to do is sit in my chair, press record, do my thing, and I ship it off to Steve, and he does everything else that you see, puts it all together. A lot of people have asked me, Lisa, you make it look so easy. I think I want to start a podcast. And I always tell them, my number one advice is don't do it alone. Unless you're really tech savvy and have that background, don't do it alone. Get somebody to help you produce it, write it, to bounce ideas off of. You might think that you have a ton of great ideas, but like Steve, who you're going to meet in just a minute, he would say to me things like, okay, what are the three takeaways? Like, this is great, but what are the three takeaways? People want to know, what am I going to get out of this? So, anyway, on today's episode, we're taking you behind the scenes. You're going to get to meet the mysterious Steve Demetrious of Audiobook Masters. And also, what is it? Soundbreaker Media?
Soundbreaker Media.
Soundbreaker Media. We're just going to give you a little background of how we met, where he came from. Like, I didn't just pluck him from the sky. I truly believe that God put Steve in my path. I truly believe that. God said, okay, I planted this seed. Now I'm going to help you bring it to fruition by planting the right person in your path, and a good person too, right? Because that's the other thing. You got to be able to get along with this person and have the same values and same morals. And I talk about a lot of different things on this podcast. So anyway, here is Steve Demetrious. Thank you so much, Steve, for
Hey,
coming
Lisa.
on. And I
Yeah.
was saying, you're used to being behind the scenes. And I was asking you before this, I was like, are you nervous? And then I thought, what have I done to you? Like, I don't give you enough trouble, just like this episode. Like, let's just be honest with the people. You guys, I was supposed to release an episode today, but I got really sick last week. I couldn't even talk. And we were supposed to release this today. And Steve was so amazing. He's like, okay, we'll just, roll with it. We'll just do it on a different day, release it on a different day. And I love that about you, Steve, that you're willing to work with real life things that happen. So normally I have a few episodes, what do we call it, in the can?
In
What's
the
the word?
can. Yep.
I don't know and I did really well. And then life kind of threw some things at me, and I don't have that. So this is an example, actually, Steve, right? If I didn't have you, there'd be no episode coming out. And maybe I would have stopped. I've had a lot of
Mm.
things thrown at me just in my life since we started moving. How many times did we move? Three times, three
Yeah,
moves.
at least
How long have we been doing this? How many years?
almost 3 years now.
Yeah, three moves in 3 years. Family stuff came up. A lot of stuff came up.
Hmm.
And if I didn't have you, I honestly, I'm just being honest here. I probably would have been like, I'll just wait and I'll pick it up in a few months. And a few months would turn into a year or 2 years. And I'd be like, hey, whatever happened to that podcast I was going to do? So,
Right.
yeah, hold on one second. Can you hear my husband? He's in an interview.
No, I can't hear him.
Okay, because I can hear it really clearly in my ears.
Oh, yes.
I didn't know he had an interview at the same time I had an interview, which again, we could keep that in. That's one of the realities. I'm not sitting in some airtight podcast room
Right.
studio, right? I'm not in some professional, I'm in a corner in my house, which I didn't even have that before. Remember when you came to our house?
Yeah, I think we shifted from a small little room, sharing a room with Denny, to a space in the basement, and now we have you almost have like a little alcove, right, and upstairs. Is that
Yeah.
where you're at now? Yeah.
Actually, we started, I was in the garage. Do you remember the
Oh, that's
nightmare
right.
of trying to
Yep.
set that up? By the time we got it all set up, summer hit and it was too hot
Yeah, it was like
to
110
do
degrees,
anything.
sweltering. Yep. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, congratulations on hitting that 100th episode. I mean, like you mentioned in the last episode, 90% of podcasts don't even get past like the first 10 episodes. It's just, and I think a lot of it is just, um, mapping out content. And I mean, your platform has so much to explore. I mean, when we first started, I remember, we were kind of looking at, okay, what kind of podcast is this going to be? Who's going to be our target audience? And you kind of knew a lot of that. And then as we went in, it just started evolving, and we kind of realized that, um, Worthy Woman Healing just captured a wider net, and there was so much more outreach we could do by doing the rebrand and that sort of thing. And
Yeah, and that, we met because I was in a publishing group and there was a woman in there who was really bad with tech. Those are her words, not mine. Sylvia, I don't think she'd mind if we brought her up. And I was like very curious. I was really following her along her journey of doing her audiobook. And she kept talking. She was just going on and on about how easy this guy, Steve, that she kept talking about, Steve Demetrious, how he made it so easy and how much she loved it. And I just followed along her journey. And I truly believe that was God planting a seed in my head, you know?
yeah, yeah, I've always had this kind of like fascination, obsession with home recording. I come from a music background, and I always loved the idea of like, if you could capture a sound at home in a space you're comfortable in, and then collaborate with someone or hand it off to somebody. And this was kind of like pre-COVID, before connecting online was really big. Back when I was going through school, it was really hard to do those kind of things, but then it just got easier as the technology evolved. um, and I was living in Nashville at the time, doing music audio engineering work. And then my wife Laura, she was working for self-publishing school, and I was able to connect with some of the coaches there, and they were like, hey Steve, you ever thought about producing audiobooks? And I thought, well, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I love audiobooks. I've done a lot of post audio work. Yeah, I know I'll dabble in it. So um, I picked up a couple projects, and it ended up being something that I connected with really well, and I was able to kind of help people who didn't really have access to get into recording studios. We found them, affordable microphones and things that would get the quality that we needed to capture. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. And, we've been going strong for, wow, almost 6 years now.
Wow, I didn't
Yeah.
realize it was that long. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an amazing story how you were in music, perfect guy to do the audiobooks. And I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, I don't have a space. I don't have a studio. And I remember Claudia talking about how she was in her closet. And not Claudia, Sylvia.
So,
Why did I say Claudia? Who's Claudia? That's weird.
the next client. Yeah.
That's very, oh my gosh. If you get a woman named Claudia, you're going to have to let me know. But I remember her talking about that. And then you said, well, you could do it in your closet. And at first I didn't want to. I had this tiny closet that was like just jam-packed. And you said, perfect. And I remember you said, don't take anything out, keep everything in there.
Yeah.
So it was like a barrier around me. And my mom had just died. And I know I've shared this with you before, how it was just so healing to be in that closet and speaking my story for the first time.
Hmm.
It was just so, it was like me, God, and my mom in that little tiny closet. And you made that so easy also. I was really nervous. I remember I was really nervous.
Right.
And sometimes I'd mess up but you made it so easy. I didn't want to come out of the closet, which is why I had this thought in my head, what about a podcast? And I never listened to a podcast. I didn't even like podcasts. It's so
Right.
funny, right? Same with audiobooks. I've never listened to an audiobook. Now I have, but before that I'd never listened to an audiobook. So I really went in blind. I want to share that with people who are thinking, maybe I'll do an audiobook, but I don't know. I don't have any experience. I had so little experience. I didn't even have any personal experience of listening to an audiobook or a podcast. I didn't know anything about stats. Like when you talked about the 100th episode, I even was like, I don't know, is that a big deal? I don't know, is it? And then you start sharing stats, and I'm like, are you kidding me? That is a big deal. Same with publishing a book. I forget what Chandler from self-publishing. What is the stats for people who actually publish a book? Do you know? It's
Oh
low.
wow, I mean, it's probably low because I mean, even just to get to the draft stage, a lot of people kind of
It's
abandon it
low
from there. Yeah,
because it's part of like their marketing thing that they say. I forget. It's probably about the same as like a podcast. And then I didn't know this either. Like most podcasts, don't make it to the 25th episode. I was like, wow. So I had to really like let that sink in and digest it and say, wow, God, okay, I see you working in this. I see God working in this, definitely, you
yeah,
know? So yeah, so I don't know if I ever shared that with you that I was really afraid to bring up, hey, do you do podcasts? Because I knew I wasn't going to do a podcast alone. That I knew. After the audiobook, I was like, no. And I was so afraid, I don't know, I was imposter syndrome. I thought you were going to be like, who are you to do a podcast? I did. Not that you've ever been like that before, ever, right? But
right.
my brain was like, who are you to do a podcast? You can't. And then the name of the podcast, I did a vision board a year before, and on that vision board, I put Potty Mouth Preacher podcast. I didn't know what it meant, why I put it there. I never had any desire to do a podcast. Like I said, I didn't even watch podcasts. And it wasn't until I had that idea of asking you, hey, do you do podcasts? Do you produce podcasts? And I didn't bring it up. You brought it up at the end of our meeting,
Yeah.
almost chickened out.
Well, it was I would say probably maybe 6 to 8 months before that we started doing podcasts on the side for select clients. It wasn't really something we were advertising. We're like, let's same thing like audiobooks. I'm like we'll give it a shot and see how it goes with certain people. And we had a couple that were doing really well, and one that every now and then you work with someone and you work on their audiobook and you can kind of just tell like if their voice is like or they have the personality for podcasts. And I knew when I was working on your book, I'm like, she's got a great voice for podcasts. She's able to deliver her
Wait, hold
story.
on one
Sure.
second. I'm sorry,
Oh,
Steve.
you're good.
Denny, I'm in an interview, so can you go downstairs? Thank you. Okay. We should actually keep that in there.
Keep that in
That's
there.
real life. Please don't flush the toilet. I'm in an interview. That's as real as it gets, people. So if you
That's
think
working
you
from
need a fancy studio or to kick your family out when you're doing that, no, you don't.
right, right. It's like that's working from home with your spouse.
That's funny. I think we should keep that in there. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry to interrupt you. So
No, you're
continue.
fine. You're fine. But no, I was saying like every now and then, like when you're working with an audiobook client, you can just tell based on the way they're narrating and they're telling their story, the authenticity, and some people just have a real good talent for telling their story and making it relatable and just having that kind of tone in their voice. And I knew you had that right away, and I was like, let me just see if she's interested. Maybe like because your book had so many chapters in it. It was so much to tell. And I was like, you could turn this into a podcast, and really kind of dive into some of these concepts. So I was kind of nervous about bringing it to you to see if you were even kind of interested in doing it. So when you
You
said yes, I
were?
was like, all right, let's see where this can go. And then I thought, when you said you were so comfortable being in the closet with the mic, I'm like, let's just see if she wants to do an audio podcast. We'll start there and then see where it goes. But then I suggested, hey, do you want to try video? And that was a whole thing getting started with that. I'm glad you're open to it. But yeah, we had some tech hurdles. I think we tried a laptop, we tried an iPad, we tried a whole bunch of things just to kind of get everything kind of right. But we landed
I don't know
on
if you remember my computer fell off the tripod I had it on and
yeah.
broke. I don't know that's how we ended up going to the phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which has been amazing. I think we've been using the iPhone. Here's a shameless plug for the iPhone for 3 years, but it's been working great.
I do everything I can on my phone. It's
Hmm.
crazy. My husband doesn't understand how I do it because he's the opposite. He needs to be on a computer. I just find the phone so easy to use.
Yeah, and you
So
have a
we,
you have a fantastic mic that you already use for your
yeah.
audiobooks. So we were able to repurpose that and great lighting, and it's been yeah, I think the quality's been great.
In the setup for people, because I thought this too. Oh my gosh, how much is all this equipment going to cost? I don't remember how much, but it wasn't much at all. Like you made it very cost effective. You were like, okay, do this, do that. Like you had a lot of suggestions for cost effective ways to do things. So really, it's
Yeah,
just, a mic, earbuds, a light. Well, I do have the sound panels because I was sharing an
right.
office and in the garage.
Yeah, to
So
cut
I
down
still
that
have
echo,
those. I think that was my biggest investment.
the sound panels. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of times now I tell potential clients who want to do a podcast, start off with the technology that's available to you. We don't have to make massive investments first. Kind of see how if you even like the
Mhm.
process, if you even like doing a podcast, and if it is for you, then you can start making bigger
Yeah.
investments into stuff as needed. Um,
That is true. Because I do feel like you don't really know until you start doing the podcast. And the first episode, yeah, you're going to be like, yeah, it's just like when you start a diet, right? The first day's easy. Or when you
yeah,
start an exercise program. Okay, what about a week in, 2 weeks in, a month in? What about when life starts getting messy
right.
and then you still show up? That's one thing. I've never run out of ideas or episode ideas. I just feel like they just kind of come, you
I
know.
remember when we started, we kind of had the idea of like having a notebook and just writing ideas as they came. I think by our second pre-planning meeting, you had 4 pages of just titles just everywhere. I'm like, okay, we got a whole
What
season
about
here ready
this?
to go.
What about this?
Yeah,
Well, my clients are a huge inspiration. All of my clients, ever since I started, have been because I hear their voices in my head. Like they say the same about me. I hear your voice, but I hear their voice, like the struggles that they went through and the challenges that they overcame. And that's how
hmm
we pivoted also. Because I started realizing, wow, all these women, because I started off as a personal trainer, most of the women, I'd say 99, I don't actually, I think it's probably about 100% if I look back, have been through some kind of abuse, exploitation, trafficking. They didn't have a word for it, though. They didn't know what it was. And there was so
right.
much more to the actual physical weight that was on their body. And that's when we kind of started pivoting too to more healing, because I was the
Yeah,
potty mouth preacher. It's a very clever, what does Chandler say? It's clever, but not clear
yeah,
in the sense that I wasn't preaching in the sense like I'm not a pastor, I'm not a preacher. And I actually found myself using what they call potty words like less and less. I don't know why. It wasn't intentional, it just kind of happened that way. I also think it's because the clients that I was working with, if they're coming out of a trafficking situation and, the traffickers dropping F-bombs on them all the time, I don't want to be doing that to them.
right.
So it just kind of evolved and people were confused. They were like, "Well, are you a preacher?" No.
Yeah, well, I think it kind of came from the perspective of being almost like a motivational coach, and I think that was kind of where you were coming from in that first season,
Hmm.
especially dealing with a lot of I think a lot of the focus was weight loss and that kind of perspective of the podcast. And I think so it kind of fit that, but as it evolved, you're right. I think we needed to cover more ground, kind of shifting towards that healing and awareness kind of platform. And I think going with that worthy woman healing kind of just summed up the message kind of going forward and like you said, addressing all the underlying issues
Hmm.
on the personal side, but also activism, raising awareness of what's currently going on and shining a spotlight on, sex trafficking is not like the movies. It's more like this, and sharing some real experiences and inviting people to share their real experiences. I think it's been pretty eye opening.
Yeah, I love the episodes we did where I interviewed women who, for the first time, shared their story of abuse, trafficking, exploitation on Worthy Woman Healing podcast. Like, I take that very seriously because it's very easy for women or for survivors to get re-exploited. People just
Mm,
want to hear the gory details or they want to hear the movie version, right? And so I take that very seriously. Before they would come on, I would say, I'd like to do a session with you first. Like I want to make sure that they're in a good place and
yeah,
that they know that they share what they're comfortable with. And during the interview, at any point, if they want to stop, we stop. And I love the episodes where I think it was Dr. Chelsea Leibowitz, and I think we
hmm
did it with April Mather too, that in the interview, they did get triggered. And they didn't say, I'm triggered, Lisa. I saw
right,
cues that
yeah,
their energy was, and I'd say, hey, do you want to stop? Do you want a healing? Do you want to heal this? And that's the coolest thing was healing things inside they didn't even realize needed to be healed. And that's God working. I feel
Hmm.
God working so strongly in that. Like, let's heal this. Because I always tell them, I'm not healing you. I'm your guide. I'm just facilitating it. It's you and God
Right.
doing it. And it's so cool to see, like, after the interview, they talk to me and they feel lighter. They say that I feel so much lighter. I didn't realize I was hanging on to that. Like April Mather in her episode, I don't know what episode it is, but it was the Tupperware containers. I don't know if
Hmm.
you remember that. She was talking about these Tupperware containers that her abusive ex-husband would force her to use. And every time she'd see those, even though it had been 10 years since she was married to him, they would trigger
It
her.
would trigger it. Yeah.
And we did a healing on it. And that was remarkable. I just love that. And now, like, hear from her and she's like, nope, nope, no problem. I
Wow.
see that, no problem. And I
Yeah.
love that. And Chelsea was the same way. Chelsea's exploitation started in childhood and it was a family friend, which is normal. It's
Hmm.
usually the way it is. It's usually someone they know. And I saw like the little girl inside of her heal. And
Hmm.
that was really cool. Even though she'd been a client, we'd done a lot of healing work. There was something about speaking her story out for
Yes.
all the world to hear, you know?
And
So
that's what I was gonna say too. I
Mhm.
definitely applaud every guest we've had on on the show because it's it's not just a small group sharing your story in front of a small group. You're going on YouTube and it's you're going to be sharing your story for potentially anyone at any time that the scene here, and that's a yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really brave move. But at the same time, this is my follow up question: have you got any feedback from other women who've seen those interviews and got confidence come share their story based on what other people have said?
Oh, yeah. They'll say, wow, her story is my story. Or I see parts of or I didn't realize that was abuse. I didn't realize that was exploitation. Or I buried it for so long and it came up and now I'm finally getting help for it. And so they see the courage of other women who are coming forward and it causes them to no longer suffer in shame and silence. So that's the devil's favorite tool.
Mm,
Shame and silence. Let's keep it in the dark. Let's keep her cloaked in shame so that she never tells her story. And
right.
the main thing is now they feel like, okay, have the courage to maybe share this with some trusted people. You don't want to just go sharing your story with anyone
Right.
initially, right? Maybe you'll get to that point eventually. But there's something just very powerful about stepping out and saying, hey, this is what happened to me. And then hearing someone on the other end say, I believe you and it's not your fault. Like I hear from women a lot about that. They'll say, when I hear you keep saying that over and over again, I start to believe, okay, it's not my fault. And I just need to find someone who's going to say, I believe you. Because there's a lot of victim blaming, a lot of victim shaming that goes on. And
Yeah.
that just re traumatizes people. And it's hard to find a therapist or a counselor who understands, especially trafficking. They don't understand or exploitation. They don't understand. And so it is hard to find somebody that you feel safe sharing your story with and that can actually help you. There's a whole thing called being trauma informed. A lot of people claim to be trauma informed, but you talk to them and you're like, "Oh, there's nothing trauma informed here going on." That's
Right.
like the buzzword right now. All the companies, all the corporate, they all want to be trauma informed. We should do an episode on that actually. Like
Yeah.
that would be a good one. Like what does it mean to be trauma informed? And the first thing is that you look at that woman, you say, I believe you, and it's not your fault. Because the courage, I can tell you firsthand, the courage that it takes to speak up and say what happened to you, it takes everything you have inside of you to actually say the words. Like it takes everything, every ounce of courage you have inside of you. And I tell women, do it with a shaky voice, do it scared, do it to someone you trust, though, but do it to
Hmm.
God first. Practice with
Right.
God. God already knows because he's witnessed everything, right? So go to God first and then ask God to lead you to someone trusted that you can share your story with.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much power in that validation.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and I can't thank you enough, Steve, for being a very safe person because I'm right. I'm asking these women to share their story with me, And then I hand this story off to you to edit it and do all of that.
Right. A guy they've never met, kind of just on the side. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
exactly. And so I made that very clear up front. I'm like, Steve, and I always say if you want to meet Steve first, you can meet him. But if you have questions, you can ask questions. If you have anything that's bothering you, just let us know. I've never had a woman question it actually. They all, said no, if you trust him. And we've seen your podcast. That's the also the thing, right?
Right.
There's that, what is it called? Social proof, or what is that what the term?
Yeah, well, it's kind of establishes. I mean, it's not just a couple of things. One, your authority on the subject, and then the trust factor. You are a reputable person who's been speaking on the subject for many years, and they can go back and see, a whole library of videos and interviews that
Mhm.
you've done to kind of validate. Okay, this is a safe spot. You know, and if it wasn't, with social media these days, things can spread like wildfire if it wasn't, right? So that's
Yeah.
um, the power of having an online presence.
You are only as sick as your secrets. It is time to stop suffering in silence and join other women who are also on a healing journey, who are being raw, real, vulnerable, and honest with what they are going through in their life, what they have been through in their life. And wherever two or more are gathered, we know God is with us. It says it right there in the Bible. So there is power to group healing. Miracles happen in there. You have one woman sharing, opening up her heart. Suddenly, everyone else in the group is saying, yeah, I've experienced that. I'm not the only one. There's such power in knowing that you are not alone in your suffering. You are not alone in your healing. And we meet twice a month. And in between those times, a lot happens, right? And it's important that you have time in between the sessions to practice the healing technique that I teach you, so you can come back into the group and celebrate with the other women. Hey, I actually remembered to do the healing technique in that moment. That trigger didn't derail me anymore. But it's practice. I'm also a personal trainer, right? You don't just get a six-pack abs by doing one sit-up. You have to keep doing it over and over again. You don't run a marathon. You don't go out and run 13.1 miles for a half marathon the first time, right? You practice running a little bit every day. And that is what we do in Worthy Woman Healing Group. Join today and tell yourself, I'm going to give this a 3-month commitment minimum, because I know I need time to practice outside of these sessions, and come in and get guidance from the other women on how to actually heal all of these wounds, heal my mind, body, and soul one trigger at a time. You are worth it.
It
No,
allows
it's
you to
good.
establish yourself as a person of authority, and create that credibility. Yeah.
Well, and the same goes for you, right? Like you've established trust, like within this, like I said, I didn't just find you off the street. I would not recommend doing that. You were a referral, and it's interesting. Like I really paid attention. I asked Sylvia a ton of questions every single session we had with the self-publishing group. It's like I was testing to see if you were safe.
Right.
And she was like, she didn't wait. She just absolutely, she adored you. And Sylvia, she like will tell it like it is,
Oh yeah. Yep.
you know, and she was like, no, I trust him 100% with my story and I would do it again. And I feel the same way. So that's a testament to you that you have that reputation. So I would encourage anyone out there who, if you want to do an audiobook and it's a very personal story, maybe you're like me, it's the first time you've shared the story. You're not an author. I wasn't an author. I never wanted to
Hmm.
write a book. I can't recommend you, Steve. I recommend you to everybody.
Well, thank you. I
But
appreciate that. I mean, one of the things I always wanted to do with this company, whether it's with audiobooks or podcasts, is um, give a vehicle to someone to tell their story. Because growing up, in the 90s, and so like you, if you didn't have a syndicated radio show or a TV show or some platform, your story wasn't getting out, or a publishing deal for your
It's
book.
true.
Now with the internet, you have the ability to have your own platform on YouTube, on a podcast, release an audiobook, publish your own books, and tell your story without really kind of middleman being
Hmm.
that barrier. I mean, I know there are the social media platforms that have their some constraints on things, but for the most part, I mean, the world's your oyster now. And if I can help facilitate that in a credible way, safe way, and that's kind of what our aim is here.
Yeah, like I love that. And I remember thinking to myself, "Oh my gosh, there's parts in my book that are hard, you know. They were hard to write, they were hard to live, and there were a lot of F-bombs in my book, and I thought, Steve's gonna judge me. I remember talking to Sylvia about that. I was like, but there's a lot of F-bombs and there's some sexual stuff in there, like stuff that happened and that I don't know, like, and she was like, she was always like, Lisa, I'm telling you, he's not going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't possibly produce this. She said, this is how Sylvia put it. Usually people that are writing memoirs, they're not writing about puppy dogs and rainbows.
Right, right.
They're writing it because they've been through some shit and they're on the other side and they want to help others get to the other side. She's like, so I don't think Steve is like, well, unless there's rainbows and puppies, wagging their tails, then
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do this.
And those are the stories that really connect with people, and especially when the author is narrating it themselves. I've done a few memoirs where we have hired professional narrators to narrate it, and they do a great job reenacting it, but it's not like the same as hearing from the direct author themselves. And I've had some books that come through with people telling their stories of sobriety and dealing with some really dark stuff, drug abuse, and how they gone through it. And when they get to those moments, those chapters, I mean, it's really heartfelt. You can hear them coming through, and yeah, they're trusting you with their story, and I think it's really important. We try to do our best to make sure that we're delivering a product at the end of the day that meets that author's vision and is authentic to their voice.
Yeah, and I love that. And while I was doing it, that was before I had those thoughts before I started doing it. While I was doing it, I was so into it that I not once did I think, oh my gosh, I can't send this chapter to Steve. Like I didn't even think about that until just now. Like I never really crossed my mind. It wasn't a thing. I thought it was going to be a thing. It wasn't a thing.
I'm glad. Thank you. Thanks
So
for sharing
yeah.
that. I got a couple questions I can ask you.
Oh Lord. Oh Lord, help me with the answers to this one.
Okay, so we are 100 episodes in now, 101 after today. Um, Looking back on the last 3 years, is there any particular episode or theme that's really kind of stuck out to you as your favorite, or you think has had the most impact? I know we've covered a
Well,
lot of
just like
different.
I said, just the interviews with the women that really had the most impact on me.
Mhm.
And then for me, it'll always be the first episode, and maybe we can revisit this too. Maybe we did, I don't remember. The I am, because it's the foundation of my entire business, like claiming your
Mhm.
I am. It's so important that that's always going to be it's my favorite thing that I do on the first night of our retreat. When I'm in a session with a woman for the first time, that's the first thing we do in the session. It just lays the foundation for everything we do from that point on. And I feel like that's what we did with the podcast. The very first episode was your I am and then your why.
Yeah.
And then I'm always referring to that. I feel like in a lot of episodes, I feel like almost every episode, I'm referring back to that. Maybe we
Yeah.
need to revisit that. I don't know if we did it for Worthy Woman Healing.
But yeah, it's the core pillar of the whole platform, I think.
It is. And then for me, I like the evolution of how faith and God and Jesus have been woven in to every single episode, because I think that's important. And before that, I really wasn't, when we were the potty mouth preacher, I wasn't talking as much about God. I was a little, but not as boldly as I am now, right?
Hmm.
And as confidently as I am now. Before, I think I was kind of like sort of shy about it. Like I can't,
Yeah.
and I've actually had women reach out to me and say, what's going on? Like women who aren't believers, like they were
Mm,
former clients, and they're saying, Lisa, what is all this God and Jesus stuff? Like they're very curious about it. And so that's really cool that I now get to have a conversation. Like they've seen me, I've always been a believer, right? But not like this, not like I am now. And so, first of all, I love that women are noticing that knew me before because it tells me I'm walking the walk. I'm
hmm.
doing what God and Jesus want me to do. I'm sharing them, I'm sharing their word. So I love that. That
Yeah.
feels like, okay, this is a good thing to be doing. And just like having that conversation, and they're not coming at it like in a bad way. They're very curious. I've had several women reach out to me, and then we end up doing sessions, and I talk to them about, what does that mean? And I help them read the Bible. Like when I first started reading the Bible, I was overwhelmed. I started in the Old Testament. That's not a good plan.
Right.
Freaked out on animal sacrifices. Isaac, God's like, sacrifice your child. What is happening? So, I help them start in a place in the Bible and I give them guidelines. We did an episode on that.
Hmm.
I really liked the episode where I talked
Yeah.
about, you read scripture and then you say, what's the lesson? What's the blessing? What's the promise? What's the commandment? What's the sin to avoid?
Yep.
And so that sort of gives them a framework. And so I just like that God and Jesus are showing up more and more in each episode. I really like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
there's
love that
not
you bring
like,
your
was that?
I love that you bring your faith into it. I think a lot of people have a perception of Christianity kind of being um a very self-righteous thing, but when you actually look at the life of Jesus, he got down in the trenches and he went and found the messy people and people that were struggling with things, and that's that's where I think the core of the faith is, and I think you do a really good job at bringing that in. Not from like a self-righteous pointing finger down perspective, but a very kind of like heartfelt, like, here, this is the faith that can help me through my struggle. I think it can help you as well. And I think that that's translated really well.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I don't have like one, like I said, one particular episode. It's always the foundational one, the I am, and then the interviews. The interviews are hard though. We haven't done, how many have we done? Maybe
You've probably got about
five,
six.
six. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we talked about doing one a month. They take a lot out of me.
Hmm.
They do because I like to meet with the woman before and after and during, and it takes, I don't know why, it takes a lot out of me. So and I don't like to interrupt it. They're long. Those are hard ones, I think, for you to edit.
Yeah, because there's a lot in there, and we've done a few two-parter episodes now because the story is just is so in depth. And you're right, you don't want to water it down, you don't want to cut it down. It's one of those things that um if they're being brave enough to go on camera and tell their story, you don't want to silence any part of it, right? I mean, if they're willing to share it, then we're going to share the whole thing, unless they ask otherwise after. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's been
exactly. Yeah. And so like I appreciate you, editing those and just I imagine the patience it takes for you to edit a 2 hour interview and turn it into two parts and where do you cut it off? But I don't know how you do it. You do it, it's seamless. So, you know, and I have gotten feedback from people. I think I talked about in the last episode. I've gotten messages what is episode 10? I don't know what episode 10 is.
I think I have
I
it up.
got so many messages about episode 10, and I think it might have been one where I was interviewing someone
Yes, it was.
because they'll say, you ladies were talking.
It was with Dr. Chelsea Leibowitz.
Oh, wow.
Healing trauma heals your life.
So out of all the feedback and messages I've gotten, that one is women's favorite. That
Wow.
one resonated with women the most, which I thought
Interesting.
was interesting. I didn't realize it until we did the 100th episode, and I was just reading off some of the, messages I've received, and I was like, what is it with episode 10? There's so many messages about episode 10.
We'll have to tell Chelsea she'll have to come back as a return guest or a frequent flyer.
I will actually, I'm going to have to tell, I think I've ever shared that with her. Yeah. So
Yeah, she
that's
was
really
great.
cool.
She was great, and I like that she brings her perspective, from her background too, as a doctor and that side of things in, and yeah, we've had some great guests. I do. I have a personal favorite episode actually from the very first season, episode 35. The one thing you can tell your daughter. I think to me that was one of the first episodes that I started seeing where the shift was starting to happen for the worthy woman thing and the idea of like
Interesting.
instilling self-confidence and stuff. And I have an almost 6-year-old daughter, and I'm always thinking about that. What can I say to her to give her um empowerment and confidence. And I've been telling her now, she runs across the street every day to go play with her best friend, and we're always doing that, you gotta look both ways and stuff. And she's always like, Daddy, watch me as I cross the street. And I've been telling her over the last little while, like, I'll watch you, but at the end of the day, your safety is your responsibility, and I'm not always going to be there. Like I'm teaching you to look both ways and identify the self-awareness, kind of going back to Kelly's episode, right, about situational awareness, and she's starting to get that.
Wow. I love that you said that to your daughter. I
Yeah,
was
it's a hard thing to
absolutely,
say to her because you want to be there for everything, right? But it's like, I need to
but it's
start
true.
taking some ownership of your responsibility. You got to be the one that's going to look both ways when you cross that street and be aware of
I
yeah.
absolutely love that you said that. I know sometimes I feel bad because your daughter's young in some of the episodes or just in our sessions. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I don't want to freak him out. Like I forget you have a little one. But, I also like you got to be aware and I think that's like Chelsea's episode. They were because it was a family friend that did it
Hmm.
to her. And the mom totally trusted him, which is how he got her alone in hotel rooms and on vacations and at his house. And
Yeah.
so, and like again, like I hate to say that because it's like I don't want people to be like, oh my gosh, I have to, worry that every single person I think we can trust. It's just being aware, that's all.
Yeah.
It's just like this aware because you can't live in this paranoid state either where you're not trusting the people that are closest to you, you
Right.
know. But I wish we could have Chelsea's mom on because she says there were several times she was like, ooh, she had that feeling,
Hmm.
but she didn't act on it. She told herself, oh, you're being crazy. You can trust him. So that's a clue. If you have that feeling that act on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
And don't be
little
afraid to say
whisper.
no. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little whisper. No, I think, if we're on vacation with a family friend, no, I think our daughter's going to sleep with us. It's okay.
Yeah.
But thank
Yeah.
you for offering, and be firm about it.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting when you talk to her how she just was kind of like, huh. She saw some things. It's funny how we talk ourselves out of it. Well, Kelly, that episode with Kelly, with the situational awareness, we talked about that a lot, about how you kind of talk yourself out of it.
Yeah.
You feel something's off and then you talk yourself out of it. That was it through every interview we did with women on the podcast. They all said there was a moment where they were like, hmm. I even have a chapter in my book called
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
and they ignored it. They just ignored it. Go away. I'm overreacting. I'm being overly sensitive, whatever it might be. So
Yeah.
I'm really happy to hear that okay, this is funny. You got to tell people that one time when Laura went away and you were all stressed out, you got to tell them.
It was she was away at a conference, and I was watching the kids for it was almost like I think it was almost 10 days. She had to be there before the conference to set up, stay for the conference, and then do the wrap up. So at that time I had my son was 2, my daughter was 4. So you can imagine it was some nights got chaotic and stuff, and we got both of them kind of screaming or crying or wanting something. Your anxiety starts building up because you're like, I can only manage so much, and you're trying not to burn food, and you're doing all these things. And then I remember your episode about uh uh where you feel you can heal it by kind of just like calming yourself down. And I did that. I was able to like kind of like put my hand on my heart, kind of get my heart rate down a little bit. And I could feel like some tension building up in my head a little bit. I was kind of just relaxing that. And yeah, it worked.
I absolutely love that. I love that because I don't work with men, so I don't know what happens when men try to do this. So
Yeah,
I love that. First
we're
of
not
all, that
great
you even,
multitaskers.
I love that you even knew, that you even remembered to do it and
Yeah,
that it
well, I
actually
think it was right
worked.
around the same time that episode kind of dropped, so it was like fresh in my mind too. I'm like, I'm gonna try this and kind of heal in the moment a little bit, and yeah, it works.
That was so funny. I was like, wow, okay, this is good then. So all you dads out there, women, if you're watching, teach your husband this. My husband, I've taught him to do it also. And he's like, wow, I can't believe how that works. Because
Hmm.
your inclination is to say, go away, anxiety.
Um, so last question for you as we kind of shift towards wrapping up. Where do you see the Worthy Woman platform kind of going over the next 1 year, 3 years? If we were had this conversation in 3 years from now, where what would you be saying? Where
You
would you
mean
like it to go?
for the podcast or for what?
I think Worthy Woman healing in general, you know.
I want to see my big passion, especially after doing my first international retreat, which as you know was like, it was years in the making, is doing more of that, like taking women who are watching the podcast, bringing them into Worthy Woman Healing Group, and where they get to know each other and they heal alongside of each other. They stop suffering in shame and silence all alone, and then we go on a retreat. And my goal is to live in the Dominican Republic where we have the retreat for a month and do like 3 retreats back to back. And then the last week, my husband flies out and we just relax. That's my dream. So that's really where I see it going.
That's amazing.
And then just growing the podcast, just reaching more women. My thing is,
Yeah.
okay, God, who do you want me to serve? That's what I say. That's my prayer before I do an episode, before I do a session, is I say, God, use me. You give me the words. You help me reach that. I focus on one woman, but somebody told me, if you want to grow, you need to focus on more than one woman. But for me, it's really about like, I just want that one woman to watch this podcast and say, I don't feel alone anymore. Or, wow, okay, that's what it was. That's what I've been going through. So she has a name to it.
Hmm.
And maybe it gives her the courage to speak out or get the help that she needs or just not feel so alone. Because, when you're going through stuff, you think you're the only one going through it. We have a tendency to do that, just people in general. Why am I the only one that's ever gone through this? I guarantee you're not.
Right.
So yeah, that's my main thing. I just want God to keep using me in whatever way he wants me to serve. Like I'm completely surrendering to God. Okay, you show me the way. I'll keep doing this as long as you want me to.
Well, I think you're doing a great job. Thank you for hopping on this wild train. It's been awesome. I hope we get to do 100 more episodes and 100 more after that.
That's what Denny
And
said. My husband said, "Wait till 1,000." I'm like, 1,000. But it doesn't scare me. It doesn't sound like I've
right.
never not wanted to do, and I've never been like, oh, I have to do a podcast episode. I get mad when I'm not able to. Like when I was sick, I was like, oh, I'll be so mad if I
It,
can't do it.
it blows my mind. I think I've told you this before, how you just get on camera and you're like, I think today I'm gonna be talking about this, and you just go. It just goes. And like I'm like, you have no script, it's just like you're just ripping on it. I can't do that. I got a teleprompter when I do my videos and stuff because I got
You
to.
have a teleprompter right now?
Yeah, well, no, not right now, but if I'm trying to work on tutorial videos and stuff, I got to like sketch it all out. But I'm very impressed how you're able just to go off the cuff and just speak so naturally and authentically about it. And I think that's that's a true sign of someone who's in the right place, doing it naturally and getting the most authentic impact on people. So
Well,
um,
thank you, Steve. And you
yeah.
see, I started thinking I should have processed you because you said you were nervous before. I should have been peace processing you. See, it wasn't scary.
No, we got through it. um, well, great. Should we wrap it up here?
Yes, you want to say you are worth it.
Okay, ready?
Ready?
1, 2, 3. You
You
are
are
worth
worth
it.
it.
All right.